just to start off with, it'd be fantastic. 100 days, it's 98 days to go now, isn't it, until the Paralympics in Tokyo. But can I just ask you to start by sharing a little bit about your own stories? So I guess your introduction to the sport and then a bit of your athletic journey. So Ellen, do you want to start as you were?
Yeah. So I got into the sport through there's an organization called Reach, and it's for people with arm deficiencies, kids with arm deficiencies, and I would be a member of that. They have a magazine every month, and my dad noticed, I don't know if it's how my dad noticed through the magazine, but the manager of the Paralympic swim team at the time, her daughter was a swimmer and she had the same arm as me. So my dad got in contact with her, and she was telling him all about Paralympic swimming and invited me to a disability competition in Northern Ireland. So I was probably about 7 or 8 at the time when I went, and it was my first time experiencing any sort of competition. I had done lessons and stuff as a kid, and I hated swimming. Like, I couldn't wait to be done. But it was the competing aspect of swimming that I loved, and I loved the control of it. And I turned out that I had a bit of a talent for it. So from there, that's when I joined a local swimming club. I started training properly. I went from 1 session a week to 2 to 3 to 4 to getting up before school 4 times a week. And I represented Ireland for the first time when I was about 9. And then I qualified for my first games when I was 12 and went to Beijing when I was 13, where I came 6th in the 100-meter breaststroke. And then from there, it's literally just my whole adolescence has been being a Paralympic athlete and being an elite athlete. I've been to multiple European and World Championships. I've been to London 2012, and then in Rio in 2016 I won my first ever Paralympic medal, which was a bronze in the breaststroke. And then I became European champion in 2018, and I'm now striving for another opportunity to get a Paralympic medal in Tokyo.
Amazing, isn't it? And do you think you'll keep going with the swimming route? I interviewed Lauren Steadman actually for the Game Changers podcast, and she talked about her swimming history and then almost swimming so much and then feeling the need to go. And I actually think her change was more because she then lacked improvement. I think she got as good as she could get and she found it hard to bring her times down, and then discovered triathlon. Is there something, do you think you might move on to other sports in the future, or are you a swimmer through and through?
I actually went to boarding school at Lauren Steadman, so I trained with Lauren for a year, and then I was there for another year. But Lauren, even when Lauren was a swimmer, she'd always be running, and I think in her family there was someone in triathlon, so she was always actually really, really good at it. So I'm not surprised that she went down that route. But a part of our training was running, and I was awful at it, so no, I would never never go the triathlon route. Also, my stroke is breaststroke, and I really dislike freestyle. I find it really, really boring, so no.
And Sammy, what's about you in terms of your story into sport and your sports career?
Yeah, I guess mine was slightly different. So I wasn't born with my disability, and I had no idea about disability sport growing up. I never even wanted to be a sports person. I actually grew up wanting to be a zoologist. Oh. So yeah, I had a very, very different path I had planned for myself. And then when I was 14 years old, I was in an accident and paralyzed from the waist down, which then obviously changed my whole direction of life and course. So while I was in hospital, I spent 6 months in a spinal unit in Glasgow, and while I was there, I was sent to a thing called the Spinal Unit Games, which is something that happens every year in Stoke Mandeville, and it's all the spinal units in Scotland, England, Wales and Ireland, and it's a really amazing event, and it's just a thing to let everyone that have just had accidents meet each other through sport, and you try out as many sports as you can, and it's competition, and you win by trying out as many sports. And that's the first time I jumped in a racing chair, and I remember just being in complete awe of it. And it was just for me it was the ability to be good at something again, to have that rush. And I always loved sport, and I always really enjoyed it, but just on a social level. And I didn't really realize how much I'd missed it in the first 6 months until I jumped in a racing chair, and it was that rush of going fast and pushing around a track. And I literally loved it from the first moment I was in it, and I was hooked. So that was in 2011. And then 2012, I got my first ever racing chair, and yeah, I got quite good quite fast, which was terrifying. And before I knew it, I was training 6 days a week. I'm probably slightly different to Ellen. For me, I love training. Racing terrifies me. Like I would train every day and let someone just time me training if that counted for racing. But yeah, racing part still kind of scares me a little bit. But I love the training. I love that feeling when you're so tired and you're just like, you think my body can't give any more, and it still manages to wake up the next morning and push that little bit more. And yeah, I just find that really amazing to see that the progression each year. And yeah, I went to Rio, which was incredible. Made finals, came fifth, and 2 fifths and a fourth. And then I went on to London World Championships in 2017 and won 2 golds and a bronze medal. So, yeah.
Well, it's interesting, isn't it, that whole nervousness and being sick before races up? Because actually Tanny Gray Thompson said exactly, when I spoke to her, that kind of nausea before before races. So that's interesting that you had that in common almost.
Yeah, we're the same classification, same races, so it's quite canny. Yeah, I'm literally out in a race just down in Switzerland, and I was sick before all my races at the weekend as well. It's still, I always thought maybe I'll grow out of it. It's not happened yet.
Mine's like the opposite. It's like no matter how many times I go to the toilet before I go to the call room, I will still be bursting for the loo, like until I'm behind the block. And then after the race, it's like, oh, it was just nerves.
Yeah.
When did you realise that you could make a career of your sport, that it became more than something that you were doing as a pastime, but you could take it very seriously?
You know, honestly, like probably up until 2013, like I'd been doing it a year and a half, and I was literally just doing it because I really, really enjoyed it. And it wasn't until British Athletics kind of came to me and said, like, we'd like to get you classified. Then I kind of realised when you're classified and you start looking at the world rankings and seeing maybe actually, you know, I could get into funding and actually make this a career. But I had no idea that sport could be a career growing up. I really didn't realise that. So it was, a completely new world to me, which was incredible. It's amazing that I can do my hobby from a job. I think it's amazing.
And what about you, Ellen, in terms of that? You were so young, I guess, going to your first games. You must be on that at 13 in Rio and everything.
It's not that it was like, it kind of almost feels like it wasn't a choice. It was kind of just something that happened, and it was the way I grew up. Like it just became my life. And like I just feel like I had such a different life growing up to everyone else that doing normal things just kind of bored me. Like I'd rather be training, I'd rather be going and competing, and I think making it a career kind of just came naturally. I think it wasn't really until after Tokyo, when I won the medal, that I saw the potential that a medal could do, especially in terms of helping other people. It's kind of sad that it takes winning a medal and being successful in a sport for your voice as a athlete with a disability to be heard, or even a person with a disability to be heard. And I kind of saw that as an opportunity to make a difference. And it was kind of only through that I got a lot more interested in like kind of being an advocate and kind of putting myself out there. That's when it began.
That's really interesting. That was one of the questions I was coming on to later on, but it's good to explore that now, almost, in terms of, I've seen one of your TED Talks and some of the stuff that you've done. So is that something, as you say, that kind of not came to you, but that opportunity to make an impact for other people and to share your story and have that impact?
Yeah, so I grew up really insecure about my arm, and that was because there was nobody like me in the media. There was nobody like me to compare myself to. And the only place that I felt comfortable and I felt happy within myself was in sport. And that was because I could see people like me, for one. And even when I wasn't in like a para atmosphere, when you're in a sport, it doesn't matter about what you look like or who you are, as long as you're training hard and you're achieving what you want to achieve. That's all that matters. And I knew that there were people out there who maybe necessarily weren't involved in sport, and they didn't have anyone to look up to. And I kind of felt like it was my responsibility. Like I have had all of these opportunities because I did sport, and now it's my opportunity to give back and kind of speak up for people who don't have a voice. And I also thought when I was growing up that it was all me, like I was alone in the whole thing. But once I started talking about how insecure I was about my arm and how nearly afraid I was of having a disability. I've heard the term before, like coming out of the disabled closet, and it's like accepting your disability. And I kind of felt like I was all alone in that. But the more I talked about it and the more I explored like how I felt about things, the more I realized that there needs to be someone to talk about these things. There needs to be role models for kids growing up, and even adults who maybe were born like it but acquired a disability and still haven't accepted it. And it's really, I actually didn't want it to be me, but there was nobody doing it, so I kind of just stepped up to the position.
And how, in terms of you, Sammy, how do you feel in that I guess having an impact for others and then being seen as a role model in that space?
Yeah, I think like I genuinely, the moment I had my accident, the moment I was told that I was never going to walk again, I honestly believed that I was going to be stuck in bed forever, because I'd never met anyone in a wheelchair. I had no idea that that was going to be my life. I'd never seen anyone my age in a wheelchair, and especially in a wheelchair that they were able to get around by themselves. My mum and dad were petrified because they didn't know what kind of life I was going to lead. And I just think it's ridiculous. At 14 years old, I didn't know that someone in a wheelchair can still have a very positive, independent life. And so, yeah, I definitely feel like it is my responsibility to show people, to teach people, to be seen, and be able to tell people that, you know, yeah, okay, I can't stand up and put one leg in front of the other, but I can get around in my arms, and wheelchairs are incredible nowadays. They shouldn't be disabled. It makes me completely able. And yeah, just kind of trying to push that forward. And it's given like young kids that opportunity to ask, because it's them that are going to grow up to be ignorant adults if they're not taught when they're younger. And you get taught absolutely everything at school nowadays, but still disability is not something that's spoken about. And I just think it's mad. I think it's really crazy. And it's incredible how quickly kids will accept you if you give them the opportunity. You go into a classroom, you say, I can't stand up, I can't feel my legs, and they go, cool, right, that's fine. And then they'll grow up to be adults that understand disability. And it's, you know, you get to a stage, and unfortunately, and you can, like Ellen will be the same, you go to schools, they'll stick their hand up, they'll ask loads of questions, and then you work your way up the years, and they just stop. They stop asking, and then they start assuming. Like, I have all the time adults be like, so did somebody drive you here? And I'm like, no, drove myself. I have my own house. Because they just stop asking, and they just start to assume. And yeah, people just need to be educated more about what can happen and the kind of life that someone with a disability can lead.
And how do you feel attitudes have changed towards, I guess, disability and Paralympians, what they've done over the period of your career? Have you seen that change, especially around, I guess, London had an impact in terms of a UK attitude?
Yeah, like I think I came into the disability world very, very late. And I came in probably at the right time to be in the upward movement. So I have seen that the positivity and people being more interested, in businesses being more interested, but there's still obviously not enough. It's never going to be on the same level as able-bodied sport, and that's quite scary that it might never be seen on that level. But yeah, I've definitely seen a lot more people interested, especially in watching and the TV coverage since London 2012. But I'm sure Ellen will know what it's like. It was like before London, because I'm sure it was very, very difficult before London hit.
Yeah, because when I was in Beijing and I came back, there wasn't really any talk about Paralympics or disability sport, and I think that's why I became probably even more insecure, because some people knew what Paralympics were and they associated it with disability, and I was nearly too afraid to say I was a Paralympian. Like, I would hide that aspect. I would hide that part of me as well. From my friends or in my family. Like, I just wouldn't want to talk about it, because when you hear Paralympics, you hear disability, and then it's almost like people automatically look down and assume, as Sammy said about disability, people can't do things with a disability. And like, I feel like London 2012 made a really big impact, but at the same time, it's almost like it made such an impact at the time, and then people kind of forgot about it. And people who who love sport and are involved in sport, I think it made a big difference for them to try and help understand. But for general public, it's like it happened and they forgot about it. And then Rio came around and people were like, oh yeah, Paralympics, and they kind of got on the bandwagon again, and then it dropped off. And I feel like we're still kind of in the beginnings of like whispers of the potential of people with disabilities. I don't feel like it's been as fast a movement as everyone has wanted it to be. Like the fact that with all the controversy going on about the games at the moment, people are still saying the Olympics, the Olympics, the Olympics, the Olympics. And all you have to say is the games. You don't even have to say the Olympics and Paralympics. You could just say the Tokyo Games. And that includes Paralympics. It's almost like Paralympics is an afterthought half the time. And they include Paralympians. The media might include Paralympians in awards or something just to kind of tick a box. And even like if you were a gold medal winning Paralympian with a world record, you're still not seen as good enough compared to an Olympic silver or bronze medal, which is really, really sad. And like the only way things are going to change is if the media do step up and start telling the stories properly and doing their research properly. Like when I went to Beijing, I was still getting called a Special Olympian. London 2012, in the lead up to London 2012, it was Special Olympian. And then when I won the medal in Rio, I get called an Olympian. And I'm like, no, I'm neither. I am a Paralympian and I need you to recognize it, because it's such a sign of disrespect. Like if you don't take the time to educate yourself, if you want to interview me, you need to do your research.
Yeah. And how has, I guess, being a Sky Scholar and that kind of program helped you both in terms of profile and beginning to change those media perceptions?
I think when I applied for the Sky Scholar, the one thing that I said in my interview was I want to help change people's perspective of people with disabilities and help grow Paralympics in Ireland. And what Sky gave me, not only did they give me kind of the profile and the fact that like it's Sky and Sky Sports, it's like really exciting and people pay attention to that, but they also gave me the skills. We had like communication workshops. We learned how to communicate properly and really get the message across. And we learned like where our faults were in terms of how we could improve our communication. So even like little things like that have made such a big difference. And it's almost given me the confidence, like I know what I'm talking about. I know I'm not in the wrong here, and I know how to tell you what's going on.
Yeah, it definitely it makes you feel a lot more confident when you're backed and you're supported by such a big company like Sky, and when you're selected alongside Olympians and able-bodied people as well in this with the exact same money, with the exact same profile, and being given the exact same options, does make you feel that you're being actually seen on a level playing field. And yeah, it's still pretty mad. See, when I see my face on like Sky News, I still find it a bit odd, but you know, it's really cool to have, because that's I mean, Ellen, the same with that. We want to change perception, and that's what we want to do. We want people to see us and not think, oh, bless, or look, they've got that. You know, you want people to say, wow, look how fast they are, look how hard they work, and that's all I want people to see.
Yeah, that's so true, isn't it? And I guess, are there brands, we talk about the media organisations, but also brands and sponsors? How has that been for you in terms of finding additional funding? So obviously you've got funding through your sports organisations, your national governing bodies, but has it been easy to find sponsorship? Have you found other commercial support?
I do have sponsors, and I've had my sponsors are Paralympic sponsors as well. So I think kind of it's what I feel like when you're an Olympian, if you're a gold medal winning Olympian, you don't need to have a story. You don't need to be inspiring. You are just the athlete. And I think the fact that I kind of have been so open about my journey and the story I have, I think that has helped me get sponsorship. And my sponsors have been so good in terms of supporting me and kind of helping tell my story, as well as Sky have. So I have been very beneficial, but like I won a bronze medal in Rio, and I've taken that opportunity to come out and tell my story. But there are athletes who have won silver or gold medals who haven't been given the same opportunities as I have, and it's only because I've been brave enough to stand up and tell my story. And that, I think that's a little bit unfair compared to how Olympians can be treated.
Yeah,
I definitely agree with that. I think like until you've won a Paralympic medal, you're definitely not seen as good as an Olympian. You know, an Olympian just making a final is definitely seen, you know, far more like they'd rather have them on a business team and be sponsored. But I have been lucky, but you just sometimes feel like you have to do an awful lot to get a little bit sometimes from businesses, and that's the hard thing, trying to fit all that in at the same time. But yeah, I've been really lucky as well, because I'm happy to share my story and I'm happy to try and inspire people and tell people my story, and I think that's why also I've managed to get some sponsors and things as well.
I think where I've been really fortunate as well is that the people that I work with listen. They want to be educated, they want to understand, they want to help tell the story of Paralympics. And I feel like a lot of brands out there aren't willing to change and just keep saying Olympics, or aren't willing to hear what you're trying to say and try and, I feel like my sponsors have been so good in trying to make a difference. Whereas I feel like a lot of brands might look at it and be like, oh, that's too much work, that's too much effort. Why would we put our resources into that when we can just have someone else?
It's interesting though, isn't it? I guess having looked at I do some work with British wheelchair basketball, and then having looked at your stories, actually the stories that you have as elite athletes and then as individuals resonate far more with young people. With I feel you've got almost a much broader, more impactful story to tell. I say with mother of teenage daughters, but I want them to hear about all that you're doing, because actually wherever they are in life, that's hugely inspiring, isn't it? So you've almost got much more to give than an athlete that's not just gone along and trained and gone to the games, but there's something really powerful there too. I guess moving forward to the Tokyo Games, so how did you feel at the time when you discovered it was postponed last year? And it feels like you're both fairly young, so did you feel like it took you another year to train, or what was that initial reaction at the time?
I think it was obviously a difficult hit, because we work in 4-year cycles. Like, your body is at its very best on the 4th year. That's what you train for. And everyone's like, oh, so you're just going to train even harder this year? And you're like, well, no, because my body can't do that. My body can't just train as hard as it possibly can for a whole year without any break of competition and then like time off, because my body needs time off as well. So it was really trying to make like the lead up training hard, and then when we actually found out, right, it's not going to happen, it's like, right, well, my body will need its normal kind of time off, rest, and then the build up again. But obviously we didn't, well, I don't know what it was like in Ireland, but I didn't have physios, didn't have a track, so it's like trying to like make sure that my body was not going to break at any point, but I was still obviously trying to work really, really hard. But I just kept telling myself, like, control the controllables. Like, I can make sure that I'm fit and I'm healthy and I'm staying the right weight, but I'm happy as well, because obviously it's a big hit and that's what we aim for and strive for and dream for. Making sure all that's right, because I can't control a global pandemic. So I was just kind of like, that's completely out of my hands. And what I can control is how I am, and like, mentally and physically. And that was kind of what I just tried to concentrate on more. But yeah, everyone's like, oh, so you've got a year to get stronger. And you're like, well, it's not really, like, you can't just train through and absolutely kill yourself, because then things will break next year. So it's just, it was quite hard just to try and get that balance between training hard and make sure that you were actually using the year to get faster, but not injuring yourself when there was no physios or not the same kind of support.
Yeah. What about for you, Ellen? When did you get back in the water? Were you able to quickly get back in?
No, I was out of the water for 76 days, I think. And
wow.
That, like with Sammy, you were still able to do your train the way you usually would, just not on a track. Whereas it was such a change for swimmers. We had to figure out a way of training and staying fit, and obviously making sure that our bodies were still conditioned enough so that when we did get back in the water, we weren't going to get injured. So for me, it was like, also the whole of Ireland decided that they wanted to have their own home gyms. So it was so hard to get gym equipment. But I was fortunate enough to kind of get ahead of everyone. I got a bike, I set it up on a turbo, which even which is verified to me that I do not want to do triathlon, because cycling is awful. And I'm asthmatic as well, but I think I've nearly gotten used to how my asthma feels in the water, but as soon as I got on the bike, I was like, oh, I'm not this unfit, like I'm dying. And it was those little things that I had to kind of get used to. Yeah, it was hard. And I think the hardest part of it was the fact that although swimming is an individual sport, you're still part of a team. You're still with people every day. And I found it so hard to motivate myself to get up and do my session, be on the bike for an hour and a half, and then maybe have a gym session later that day. And sometimes my gym sessions that would take like an hour were taking 3 hours because I was finding it so hard to motivate myself. And then me and one of my teammates decided that we'd get up, we'd be on Zoom to each other every day at 10 o'clock. And although we were doing different sessions because he was hand cycling and I was on the bike, we were doing different kind of sessions, we would still be there for each other. And even though we weren't talking, we still had each other. And also, like, another one of the hardest things I found was that everyone was talking about home workouts, and everyone was like, oh, let's do a home workout. And I was like, my job is to train. I'm training for the Paralympic Games. I'm training for one of the most important dates in my life. I don't want to do a home workout. I'm training. There's a difference. And it was almost like, because it was such an emotional thing as well, the fact that it was a pandemic, it's something we've never been through before, trying to be easy on yourself and being kind to yourself, and just letting yourself have those days where, you know what, I'm not feeling okay today, and accepting that that's normal and there's nothing you can do about it other than just relax and maybe have an off day.
And how are you both feeling now heading towards Tokyo? I mean, it does feel like every day there's different news, and the not knowing must be so unsettling, but clearly we're going with the vision that it is happening. But how are you feeling, and where are you? What events are you both competing in Tokyo?
I'm feeling really good. I'm feeling really confident. I nearly felt like that little bit of time off, I kind of needed a breather, and it kind of made me realize how much I love racing and how much I miss it. And like Tokyo will be the first time I've raced internationally since London 2019, which was in September, so it will nearly be like 2 years since I raced properly, but I think that's just something that's building inside of me, and I'll finally be able to release it in Tokyo. So I'm actually, you know, I'm not even looking at the news. I'm not even bothered by the news. If they can't even mention Paralympics in the news title, why would I bother looking at it? You know, I just trust that it's going to go ahead, and if it doesn't, then we'll address that if it happens. But for now, it's full steam ahead.
And Sammy, you've been racing. I've seen, you know, the weekend and everything too. So how's that?
Yeah, it's good. You know, to be fair, it's going really well. I'm lucky enough. I'm still in Switzerland, so I race again like this week, and I've got 2 more races out here, which is it's really exciting. And I'm actually racing like international athletes. I'm racing people from the USA, from Switzerland, and from Japan, which is so cool. It's really amazing actually to train with race with international athletes again. So it's actually going really well, and I'm actually going quite fast. But I think I'm the same. I think I decided to move back home to my mum and dad's because they live on a farm in the Scottish borders, and I just pushed on the roads, and I pushed through. My boyfriend cycled with me, and my dad cycled with me, and training was fun. And I think I pushed myself harder because I really enjoyed going out and doing what I was doing. And so yeah, it's nice to see that I'm going pretty fast, and I'm happy with where I'm at. And yeah, I get same as Ellen, full steam ahead to Tokyo.
And I don't want to jump ahead past Tokyo, but are you both thinking that you'll continue on to Paris? Is that your kind of goals and ambitions? Where are you there?
It is for me. Yeah, I'm planning on going on till Paris. Hopefully, my body will be happy enough to carry on for another 3 years now, I guess. Yeah, I'm happy enough to do that.
Yeah, I think it's only 3-year cycle.
Yeah,
I definitely want to have a break after Tokyo for a few months. I think the 5 years is a long time. Yeah. And especially like because our world championships in 2017 were in Mexico. They're at altitude. Ireland didn't send a team because we'd never done altitude training before, so it wasn't worth the risk. And then we had Europeans in 2018, but then 2019 worlds kept getting changed and stuff. So it was a disruptive 5 years. So I think I just need a break. I need to experience a little bit of life with dry hair for a while, and then I'll get back in the pool and train for Paris.
And again, without wishing to jump past your careers, but what do you hope to do after, when you come out the pool and finish racing? Have you got kind of plans for what you'd like to do post elite sport?
I love media, so that was the initial attraction to the Sky scholarship. I wanted to be involved in media, and I love talking, as you can see. So I think once my Paralympic journey is finished, I don't want to stop being an advocate for people with disabilities. I want to be in front of the camera. I want to be a voice and visible for people, so that we can continue working on a little bit of what's the word I'm looking for? Just helping people be more comfortable with disabilities.
Yeah, I'm literally the same. I love media and things as well, and I love sharing my story and using my voice to speak out. I'd love for there to be some sort of program within schools about teaching kids about disability sport, and I would love to kind of help get that on the foot. And I love talking to kids. I love the questions they ask, and just seeing their faces as everything clicks into place, and they go, okay, so you're just the same as me, and that's cool, and they accept it. And I think that would be something really amazing, to be able to bring up that new generation with just, okay, cool, this is what you can do, this is what you can't do, and I'm totally cool with that. And so that's something that I'd really, really like to be involved with.
If anyone's going to make a difference, I think it is going to be you two that will change the world there.
I agree.
And just finally, I know some of you, I think you're part of the Women's Sport Trust Unlocked program. How are you finding that? It's been good to meet other athletes as well.
Yeah, it's been amazing. I'm still trying to find my voice and what I'm really, really passionate about. And it's so interesting to hear like women so powerful and so strong and know exactly what they want to get out of life and what they believe in, and just like straight ahead, that's what I'm going for and that's what I'm going to achieve. So I'm really enjoying just like listening to people's ideas and the things that they believe should be the way they are. And it's amazing just to hear women speak.
It's a very strong cohort this year, actually. I think they're clearer on where it is. I think last year the programme kind of helped them to find their voice and direction, and this year I think there's lots that have come on that already know exactly what they're doing too. And I guess the Women's Sport Collective is like a network for women working across sport and different areas. Do you think that's something that will benefit you, or you could kind of tap into in the future, I guess both with your careers now and then moving forward afterwards too?
Yeah, no, definitely. Like, just as a woman, I want to be able to share my voice as a woman, and I want to be able to fight for what I believe that I deserve as a woman. And again, I'm still learning all these things that I didn't realize that I wasn't on the same level as men. And like, being in all the Women's Sport Trust, you listen to it and you're like, I've never even thought about that's ridiculous. Why don't I get that? Why am I on the same level? And definitely becoming understanding it all more and more each time.
Excellent. And for you, Ellen?
I think it's just an exciting time for women. I think it's an exciting time, especially as Sammy was saying, with kids just asking the questions and accepting it. The next generation that's growing up is going to be so strong and so empowered and so unafraid to use their voices. And I think me and Sammy are just like figuring it out and actually learning what is acceptable and what isn't acceptable. And we're going to definitely use our voices for the better.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. I could talk to you for all evening, and fantastic. Thank you very much.
Thank you.